A case that has been closed for years. And it was dissolved. Because of an old photo. Some things buried do not stay buried. Some silences scream louder with time. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. One of those gray, unremarkable mornings when the city smells of wet pavement and forgotten things. Detective Nora Vasson had not requested it. No one had sent a note. It simply appeared on her desk between a cold cup of coffee and a stack of overdue case summaries, as though it had always been there, waiting for her to notice it. Inside was a photograph. Black and white, curled at the edges, its surface slightly foxed with age, the kind of image that belonged in a shoebox in someone's attic, not on the desk of the city's criminal investigations unit. She lifted it carefully, as one would handle a wound. 3 people stood in front of a building she recognized immediately, the Aldrin Mill, which had burned to nothing in 1962. 2 men and a woman, frozen mid-laugh as though someone had called out something funny from behind the camera. She had seen faces like theirs in old newspapers, in court transcripts, in the sealed boxes that lived in the basement of the precinct. The boxes labeled simply, Hargrove. Do not reopen. The Hargrove case. Nora set the photograph down and pressed her palms flat on the desk. Her heart was doing something unpleasant. A rapid, a rhythmic knocking, the way it had when she'd found her first body 17 years ago as a rookie, standing in a kitchen in the old Ferris district with the smell of gas still thick in the air. She had told herself then that fear was just the body preparing itself for what the mind already knew. The Hargrove case had been closed in 1989. Margaret Hargrove, wife, school teacher, mother of 2, had been found at the bottom of Lake Creel, 38 miles east of the city. The coroner had ruled it an accident. The investigation had lasted 6 weeks, turned up nothing incriminating, and been filed away by Chief Prosecutor Dale Sweat with the brief notation, "No further action warranted." Dale Sweat had gone on to become a senator. He had died peacefully in his sleep 4 years ago at 81 years old. The case had followed him, quietly, into the ground. Nora had stumbled across it by accident 8 months earlier while cross-referencing cold drownings for a different inquiry. Something had snagged at her, a detail so small it had apparently escaped everyone who'd looked before. Margaret Hargrove's shoes had been found on the bank of the lake, neatly placed, side by side, both facing the water. People who fall do not remove their shoes. People who are placed do not remove their shoes. Only people who believe, in their final moments, that someone is watching them. Only they remove their shoes. She had pulled the file, read it 3 times, and then quietly, carefully, said nothing to anyone. Because the names inside the file were not just dead names, some of them still walked the corridors of power in this city. Some of them sat on boards and attended charity galas and shook hands with the mayor every November at the Founders' Dinner. This was the kind of case that did not make careers. It ended them, and now someone had sent her this photograph. She flipped it over. On the back, in a handwriting she did not recognize, small, controlled letters pressed hard into the paper as though written with tremendous effort, were 5 words. She didn't go alone. Nora's breath left her body in a slow, controlled way that was the opposite of calm. The photograph showed 3 people in front of the Aldrin Mill, a building that had burned in 1962, 3 years before Margaret Hargrove ever appeared in any record as a resident of this city. Which meant this photograph was taken before. Before the marriage, before the children, before the lake. And one of the men in the photograph, the one on the left, Younger, thinner, but unmistakably him, was Dale Sweat. The woman between them was laughing. She was not yet Margaret Hargrove. She was just a woman laughing in front of a building that no longer existed, not yet knowing what was coming, not yet knowing that her shoes would one day be found arranged neatly on the shore of a cold lake by a deputy who would assume she had walked in herself. The second man, the one on the right, half turned away from the camera, face caught in a three-quarter profile, was harder to identify. But there was something about the jaw, the angle of the shoulder, the particular way he held himself. Nora had seen that posture before. She had seen it recently. She reached for her phone and pulled up a photograph from the founder's dinner. A man in his 70s. Distinguished. Silver-haired, chairman of the city's oldest law firm. Her hands were trembling now. She did not try to stop them. She had two choices. She could put the photograph back in the envelope, take it down to the basement, and slide it into the Hargrove box alongside everything else that had been quietly buried. She could do what every person before her had apparently done. Decide that the cost of knowing was greater than the comfort of not knowing. It was not cowardice, she told herself. It was survival. She had a daughter in her second year of university. She had a mother in a care home in the Eastern District who needed the supplementary insurance that came with full employment. She had a mortgage and a cat named Incident and a small garden where she grew tomatoes every August with almost fanatical dedication. She had a life that could be undone very efficiently by the right kind of powerful man who had already demonstrated once what he was willing to do. Or she could keep the photograph. She held it for a long time, looking at the woman mid-laugh. That frozen, careless, alive moment. And felt something move through her that was not quite courage and not quite fury and not quite grief. It was something older than all of those things. Something that had been waiting, perhaps, as long as the photograph itself had been waiting. She thought of shoes arranged neatly on a bank. She thought of the word accident written in a file by a man who later became a senator. She thought of how many people had looked at this case and chosen the comfortable thing. She opened her desk drawer. She placed the photograph carefully inside, face up, so the woman kept laughing up at the ceiling. Then she picked up her phone and called the only person she trusted absolutely. A forensic document analyst named Ruth, who owed her nothing, and who was, for that very reason, the safest person she knew. "I need you to look at something," Nora said when Ruth answered. "Something old." There was a pause. Then Ruth said, "How old?" "Old enough," Nora said, "that everyone assumed it was gone." She hung up. Outside her window, the city moved in its ordinary way. Buses, pigeons, people with their heads bent against the wind. No one looked up. No one knew that somewhere in this building, on the 4th floor, in a drawer beneath a cold cup of coffee, a case that had been closed for 35 years had just very quietly opened its eyes.